Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take all the source material, the biographies, the patents, the wild stories, and we put it all together to build a complete picture for you.
And today, we are really focusing on one individual, the technical genius who actually laid the foundation for what is now the most valuable company in the world, but who, consistently chose the joy of invention over corporate power.
We're talking about Stephen Wozniak. Was.
Exactly.
And the one fact that it sets the stage for this entire conversation is this. Wozniak officially, permanently, stepped away from his active role at Apple way back in 1985.
Right.
But right now, today, he is still an Apple employee. He's on the books.
Yeah, he has this the ceremonial status. He gets an annual stipend. I think back in 2006, it was something like $120,000 a year.
Wow.
And you shouldn't think of that as, just some kind of golden parachute. It's a physical symbol of his entire relationship with technology. He built the machine, but he just refused to be trapped by the corporation you need to run it.
So he's like the ghost in the machine. The ultimate symbol of the company's engineering soul, kept on purely for goodwill.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Absolutely. So our mission with this deep dive is to look past that dominant Steve Jobs narrative. We're going to go right into Wozniak's mind, tracing the specific technical wins, the unique non-corporate philosophy that drove him, and all the surprising things he's done since leaving Apple.
And we've pulled from everywhere. Biographies, patent filings, his own interviews. We're trying to understand how this philosophy of simplicity and fun and just pure accessibility became the accidental bedrock of the entire personal computer industry.
We're looking at the foundational engineer, the person who only built things because he wanted one for himself and they didn't exist yet. Okay, so let's unpack this blueprint of was. We have to start where it all began, San Jose, California, 1950.
Right. And there's a funny little detail right on his birth certificate. It actually says Stefan with an A-N. Yeah, just a little administrative inconsistency. He's always used Stephen, so, that's what we'll stick with.
And the environment he grew up in, it was the perfect incubator. His father, Francis Wozniak, everyone called him Jerry, was an engineer for Lockheed.
A huge deal. So he was surrounded by electronics, by problem solving right from the start. But Wozniak's interests, they were always so much broader than just, military contract work.
That's right. He wasn't just fiddling at his dad's workbench. Pop culture was a massive driver for him.
A huge driver. He loved the Tom Swift Jr. books.
Which, for anyone who doesn't know, were these super popular books in the 50s and 60s about a young inventor who was always solving these high-tech problems.
And he was a massive Trekkie, a huge Star Trek fan, went to the conventions. He saw that direct line from science fiction's biggest ideas to, what you could actually build in the real world.
So you have this combination of rock-solid engineering principles from his dad mixed with this wild imagination from sci-fi.
It's the perfect recipe for a revolutionary inventor. But before he built the first personal computer, he was deep in this other scene. The counterculture tech of the 1970s.
Phone freaking.
Phone freaking. This is where you see that mischievous technical brilliance just explode. He got a nickname, Berkeley Blue, because of his skill in building these infamous blue boxes.
So freaking was basically hacking the phone system, right?
Yep.
In 1971, there was this huge article in Esquire magazine called Secrets of the Little Blue Box.
And it laid it all out. It explained how the phone network used these specific audio tones to route calls internally. Frequencies that, people weren't supposed to be able to make themselves.
But Wozniak could.
Yeah.
He read that article and he built a device that could perfectly mimic that 2600 hertz tone.
A perfect digital replica. And it could trick the entire AT&T switching system into giving him free long-distance calls to anywhere in the world.
Pure analog hacking. And this little hobby, it leads directly to his first business partnership.
With Steve Jobs, yep. They had just been introduced by a mutual friend, Bill Fernandez. Woz had the technical genius to build this flawless little box.
But it's Jobs who immediately sees the dollar signs. He sees the commercial potential.
Instantly. They form a partnership right then and there. Wozniak builds the devices, and his were known for being incredibly high quality, very stable, and Jobs handles the sales.
And they sold a lot. The sources say around 200 of them for $150 each, and they just split the profits.
It wasn't about getting rich, not at that point, but it was formative. It was their proof of concept. Jobs himself said later, and this is a quote, "If it had not been for Wozniak's blue boxes, there wouldn't have been an Apple."
Wow. So that was the test run. It gave them the confidence that Wozniak's brilliant little engineering solutions could actually be turned into a product people would buy.
It was their first shared experience, turning this slightly illicit hobby into a real commercial product. And it defined their roles perfectly from day one. Was the architect, Jobs the salesman.
So while he's mastering this underground tech, he's also trying to get through college. And he had a bit of a rough start there.
He did. He actually got expelled from the University of Colorado Boulder in 1969.
For what?
For hacking their computer system, sent them a bunch of prank messages. So he had to re-enroll at a community college, De Anza, before eventually getting to UC Berkeley.
But even then, he was working as an engineer. He had a great job at Hewlett-Packard, HP, designing calculators.
And that's so important. It gave him access to the best components, to structure design principles, and it was all happening at the same time as his friendship with Jobs was growing.
You can see his whole philosophy of minimalist design in his earliest projects. I'm thinking of the cream soda computer from 1971.
Yes. He built that with Bill Fernandez, and the whole point was to use as few parts as possible. They built a working computer with only 20 donated TTL chips.
And TTL chips, transistor logic, they were the basic building blocks back then. Using just 20 was an incredible feat of efficiency.
He even called it a good prelude to the Apple Lion 2. It forced him to think about getting the maximum function out of the minimum number of components. It was his signature move.
But we can't study it today because it was destroyed.
Tragically, yes. A reporter was visiting and accidentally tripped on the power cord, fried the whole prototype. It's just gone. A footnote.
But the next gig he took on is maybe the most famous story of them all, and it really shows you everything you need to know about his dynamic with Jobs.
The Atari breakout job. 1973.
This is where Wozniak's technical genius just slams right into Jobs' financial hustle.
So Jobs is working at Atari, and they need a circuit board for their new arcade game, Breakout. And Atari makes this offer, a huge bonus, $100 for every single chip they can cut from the final design.
$100 a chip. That's a massive incentive. So Jobs, knowing Wozniak is the king of minimalist design, he brings him in, promises to split the fee 50-50.
And Woz just goes into a trance. He works for 4 straight days, hardly sleeping, and he dramatically reduces the chip count. He cut it by 50 chips.
50? How did he even do that?
His big breakthrough was using RAM, random access memory, to store the data for the bricks on screen instead of needing a separate, complex logic chip for every single brick. It was a genius bit of compression.
Okay, so 50 chips removed at $100 a chip. Atari pays out a bonus of $5,000.
Which today, adjusted for inflation, is over $35,000. It's a huge amount of money.
But that's not what Jobs told Wozniak.
No. Jobs went to Wozniak and told him Atari only paid them a bonus of $700. And he gave Woz his half, $350.
That is just unbelievable. It's such a classic story, and it really gets to the heart of their dynamic.
It does. But what's even more fascinating is Woz's reaction when he found out about it. A full decade later.
He wasn't even that angry, was he?
He was dismayed, disappointed by the deception. But he said that if Jobs had just told him he needed the money, he would have given it to him anyway.
Okay, let's just pause on that.
Yeah.
Because for anyone else, finding out your business partner basically stole over $4,000 from you. That's a friendship ender. A deal breaker. But Woz just says, I would have given it to him.
It's because the money was never the point for Wozniak. The win for him was solving the puzzle. The victory was cutting 50 chips. That was the reward.
The elegance of the solution.
Exactly. Jobs understood that Wozniak valued the engineering challenge way more than the cash, and he exploited it. It just confirms that deep philosophical split that defined their entire history. Wozniak builds the engine. Jobs builds the car company around it.
And that purity of motivation, it just flows directly into the creation of Apple. I mean, the whole reason he designed the Apple wasn't to get rich.
No, not at all. It was for street cred, basically. He wanted to impress other members of the Palo Alto-based Homebrew Computer Club.
And the Homebrew Club was everything back then. It was the absolute epicenter of the microcomputer revolution. A bunch of hobbyists who believed computing power should belong to the people, not just, giant corporations.
Right. And Wozniak's design, which he finished in March of '76, it stood out because he had figured out how to do video on the cheap. That was the game changer.
And it was all him. The sources are clear on this. He designed the hardware, the circuit board, the operating system. It was 100% his baby.
Before he even thought about starting a company, though, he was intensely loyal to HP, his employer. He offered the Apple I designed to them 5 separate
Five
times.
times. And they turned him down every time.
Every single time. The management just couldn't imagine why anyone would want or need a computer in their home. It was corporate blindness.
Which gave Steve Jobs the perfect opening.
The perfect opening. Jobs finally convinced him, look, if HP won't sell it, we will. So they formed Apple Computer Company on April Fool's Day, 1976.
They bring in Ronald Wayne for a little while to handle the administrative side. And to get the startup capital, Woz sells his beloved HP scientific calculator.
And Jobs sells his Volkswagen van. It's the literal definition of bootstrap funding.
And they get their first big break almost immediately from a guy named Paul Terrell.
Yeah, Terrell was opening one of the very first computer stores, the Byte Shop. And he saw the Apple I and got it. He understood that selling a pre-assembled board was a huge step up from the kits that hobbyists had to build themselves.
So he places an order for 50 fully assembled units.
Which was the crucial first sale. It gave them the revenue they needed to actually produce the things.
And this leads us to that infamous price tag.
Yeah.
$666.66.
A number that has spawned so much mythology.
But the real story is so much more. Wozniak. It's so much more practical.
Oh, completely. He said he had no idea about the whole mark of the beast thing. It was just math and aesthetics.
Their cost to build one was about $500. They decided on a 1/3 markup for retail.
Which comes to $666. And Wozniak, being Wozniak, just liked the look of repeating digits. So 666.66. It was just neat. It was design efficiency applied to a price tag.
Looking at the machine itself, what made it so special was how it made expensive tech affordable. It was built around the new MOS 6502 CPU.
And that chip is the key to everything. It only costs $25.
25.
At a time when comparable chips, like the Intel 8080, were several $100s. Building a computer around that radically cheap 6502 just shattered the barrier to entry.
And the board came with, what, 4K of RAM? And that all-important video display controller built in.
Right. You still had to bring your own keyboard and power supply and a case to put it in. That's why they only ever made about 200 of them. It was still a machine for hobbyists, but it was the bridge to the consumer.
And that bridge became a superhighway with the Apple II in 1977. This is the machine. This is the one that really starts the personal computer revolution.
The Apple II was Wozniak's masterpiece, period. It was the first personal computer that could do color graphics right out of the box, and it had the basic programming language built right into its ROM.
It was plug and play, a concept that just didn't exist for computers at the time.
And the genius wasn't just that it had color, but how he did it so cheaply. I mean, this is where you really see his mind at work.
Okay, so break that down for us, because doing color video in the 70s was wildly expensive. It took tons of memory, complex circuits.
Wozniak just sidestepped all of that. He got the idea from Atari arcade games, which kind of faked color by exploiting weird quirks in the NTSC television system.
NTC, that's the analog TV standard for North America.
Exactly. And Wozniak figured out a way to manipulate the timing of the video signal to inject color information into that system using just a single off-the-shelf $1 chip.
$1. That's just, it's mind-boggling. His competitors were using dozens of specialized, expensive chips to do the same thing.
It's the core Wozniak philosophy. Radical efficiency by minimizing components. Always find the simplest, most elegant path. He even admitted that when he adapted it for the European PL system, he got it to work by accident. He still doesn't fully understand the physics of why it worked so perfectly.
It's pure pragmatic invention. But even with this technical marvel, there was a huge fight over the Apple II's design.
A massive one, the expansion slots.
Jobs wanted 2 slots. He wanted a clean, closed, controlled box.
But Wozniak demanded 8. This was their big philosophical battle. Jobs wanted a closed system, an appliance. Wozniak wanted an open platform, something other people could build on top of.
He argued it needed those 8 slots for the future, for disk drives, modems, printers, things they hadn't even invented yet.
The fight got so bad that Wozniak apparently threatened Jobs. He said, go get yourself another computer if he couldn't have his 8 slots.
And it was 1. And thank God he did. History proved him right.
Absolutely. Those 8 slots created a massive third-party hardware market. It's what allowed the Apple II to run VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet program. That single application made the Apple II a must-have for small businesses.
All because Wozniak insisted on an open, expandable design. Now, you contrast that success with what came next. the Apple III in 1980.
An absolute disaster. An infamous failure.
And Wozniak's take on it was just brutal. He said it had, quote, 100% hardware failures.
He blamed it entirely on the fact that it was the first Apple computer designed by the marketing department, not the engineering department.
They wanted it to be silent, so they took out the fan.
Right, and they wanted this slick, monolithic case. The result was a machine that constantly overheated. The chips would literally pop out of their sockets. It was everything Wozniak's design philosophy was against.
But his influence didn't end with the Apple II. He was actually heavily involved in the early days of the Macintosh project from 79 to 81.
Yeah, alongside Jeff Raskin, he had a major influence on the initial concepts for what would become the first mass-market computer with a graphical user interface and a mouse.
But as you said earlier, he had some very strong and very critical opinions about the final Macintosh that Jobs eventually released.
He did. He famously called the original Mac a lousy product.
And for a lot of people, that's shocking to hear. What did he mean by that?
He was looking at it from a pure engineering and usability standpoint. The original Mac was beautiful, yes, but it was slow, it had almost no memory, and crucially, it was a completely closed box. It lacked the expandability that made the Apple II so powerful and long-lasting.
So for him, it was a step backward. It was form over function. A beautiful prison.
Exactly. He argued its success was purely aesthetic, and that the machine didn't become truly useful until after Jobs was forced out and the next generation of management made it more powerful and open. It's a critical distinction. But his ability to influence things directly was about to be cut short.
Yeah, that's an understatement. In February 1981, his life changed completely.
He was in a plane crash. He was piloting a small Beechcraft Bonanza airplane in Scotts Valley, California.
And the sources are pretty clear. He wasn't actually qualified to be flying that specific aircraft.
That's right. He lifted off too early, the plane stalled, and it crashed. Hard.
The injuries were severe. Head and facial trauma, he lost a tooth. But the real damage, the profound damage, was to his memory.
He was diagnosed with anterograde amnesia, and it lasted for 5 weeks.
And we should be clear what that means. It's not like in the movies where you forget your past. You remember who you are, but you cannot form new memories.
Imagine that. For 5 weeks, every time he woke up, he had no memory of the day before. He didn't know what had happened, what he'd said, who he'd talked to.
And the way he recovered is just, it's so perfectly Wozniak.
It really is. He credits playing Apple II computer games, his own creation, with helping his brain rebuild those memory-forming pathways. He was literally using his own technology to debug his own mind.
He called the crash a reset switch. When he finally recovered, he felt completely detached from the corporate world, from the computer madness, as he put it.
He just lost interest in that high-pressure engineering life for a while. And the crash was the perfect reason to take a long leave of absence from Apple.
And during that leave, he took some pretty major detours. The first was going back to school.
Yeah, he re-enrolled at UC Berkeley to finally finish his degree in electrical engineering and computer sciences. He finally graduated in 1986 or 87.
But not as Steve Wozniak.
No, this is the best part. To avoid the attention, he enrolled and got his diploma under an alias.
Rocky Raccoon Clark.
Rocky Raccoon Clark. After the Beatles song. It just shows how much he wanted to just be a normal student, not a tech icon. That name is on his actual diploma.
And his other big detour was much, much bigger and much more expensive. U.S. festivals.
The U.S. festivals, 1982 and 1983. He started a company called Anusin, which was short for Unite Us in Song.
And these weren't just concerts. They were these massive, ambitious hybrids of a technology expo and a rock festival.
The lineups were insane. U2, The Clash, David Bowie, Van Halen. His idea was to blend music and technology to create this huge, unifying cultural event.
A Woodstock for the 80s, but with computers.
That was the vision, but it was incredibly expensive to produce, and he lost several $1 million on the first festival alone.
And ironically, it was those financial losses that kind of pushed him back towards Apple in 1983. He needed the income.
Right, but he came back strictly as an engineer and a motivator for the teams. He wanted nothing to do with management.
And that return didn't last long. By 1985, he was gone for good from any active role. The sources all point to this growing tension within the company.
It was basically an internal corporate war against the Apple II.
The machine that was still paying all the bills.
That's the crazy part. In early 1985, the Apple II line still accounted for something like 85% of the company's sales. But all the money, all the attention, all the prestige inside Apple was being poured into the Macintosh.
And the final insult, the symbolic last straw, was when the entire Apple II division was banned from attending the Macintosh introduction event.
That was it for him. He said he enjoyed engineering, not management, and that the company had become the bane of his existence. He left to find the fun again, to start something new where he could actually build things.
So he sold most of his stock and started his next company, CL9.
But, and this brings us right back to where we started, he never officially quit. He chose to stay on that employee list in that ceremonial role as a living link to the company's origins.
It's the perfect Wozniak compromise. He gets the connection to his legacy without ever having to sit through another meeting about quarterly projections. So after he leaves Apple's orbit, Wozniak just spends the next 4 decades proving that real innovation doesn't need to happen inside a giant corporation.
And his motivation never changes. It's always about taking something complex and making it simple and accessible for normal people.
His first big venture, CL9, is a perfect example. That's the company he started in 1985.
Right, and it led to the Core Remote in 1987. This was the world's very first programmable universal remote control.
It's easy to forget what a nightmare home electronics were back then. You had a remote for the TV, one for the VCR, one for the stereo.
Total clutter. And Wozniak saw that complexity and just engineered a single, clean solution to control everything. It was a classic Woz project.
Then in 2001, he founded Wheels of Zeus, or WOZ.
A great acronym. And this company was focused on creating wireless GPS technology.
And his mission statement for it was so humble. He said he wanted to help everyday people find everyday things much more easily.
This is years before, tile trackers or Apple's AirTags. He was predicting this world of ubiquitous connected devices. The company closed in 2006, but the vision was spot on.
He also did a few more traditional corporate things, like co-founding a holding company called Aquacore Technology with some other Apple alumni. But his real passion project seems to have been education.
Oh, absolutely. He achieved a lifelong goal by actually becoming a teacher. He taught computer classes to kids, grades 5 through 9, and also to other teachers.
And he put his money where his mouth was. He used the leftover funds from his U.S. festival company, Unusin, to pay for extra teachers and buy computers for schools.
It's a beautiful full circle moment. The money he lost on that ambitious festival got repurposed into this incredibly successful and personal philanthropy. And that eventually led to him launching Was You in 2017, which is an online tech education service.
And if you fast forward to today, his interests are just all over the map. They're huge global challenges.
Right. In 2020, he co-founds F-Force. It's a marketplace for funding green energy projects using blockchain.
So you can invest in an eco-friendly project, and the energy savings it generates are tracked on a blockchain and paid back to you in a cryptocurrency token, the WOZX token.
It's ecology, finance, and cutting-edge tech all rolled into one. And then in 2021, he literally looks to the stars and co-founds Privateer Space.
The mission there is to solve the problem of space debris, space junk.
Which is a huge and growing problem. It's the Wozniak philosophy scaled up. He went from minimizing chips on a circuit board to minimizing junk in Earth's orbit.
And of course, he also found time to co-found Silicon Valley Comic-Con with Stan Lee.
Of course, the ultimate fusion of his two loves, pop culture and technology.
So when you look at his patents, the actual hard evidence of his genius, what stands out?
The big one, the one that got him into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, is U.S. patent number 4,136,359. It's titled Microcomputer for Use with Video Display.
Which is the patent for?
For the brilliant, cheap video and color system in the Apple Lion 2. It's the technical core of the entire revolution. He also holds the patents for the Disk2 floppy drive controller, which gave the Apple II affordable storage. These are foundational technologies.
And the recognition is everywhere. He and Jobs got the National Medal of Technology in '85. And there's even a street in San Jose named after him.
181's Way, right outside the Children's Discovery Museum. A permanent landmark.
But beyond the inventions, it's his philosophy about money that really sets him apart. He seems to have a genuine disdain for just accumulating wealth.
He really does. He said he didn't want to be near money because it could corrupt your values. This led to one of the most incredible moments in Apple's early history.
The stock giveaway.
The stock giveaway. He felt it was deeply unfair that some of the earliest Apple employees weren't given stock options, so he offered them $10 million of his own personal stock to make it right.
And Jobs refused to do anything similar.
Wozniak did it anyway. He literally paid out of his own pocket to uphold his sense of fairness when the company wouldn't. It tells you everything.
And that value system connects directly to his loud support for the right to repair movement today.
He's one of its biggest champions. His argument is simple. Apple was built on open, accessible technology. The Apple I and II were made to be tinkered with. And now the company sells these sealed boxes that you can't open or fix yourself.
He sees it as a betrayal of the original hacker spirit that founded the company.
A total betrayal. He sees it as anti-democratic, an attack on innovation itself. And he's not afraid to say it, even though it's a critique of the company he co-founded.
He's still fighting these fights. Just this year, in 2024, he won a major lawsuit against YouTube.
Yeah, for failing to stop a crypto scam that was using his face and his name to trick people. The court said YouTube was liable. It shows he's still deeply engaged in protecting his identity and fighting the misuse of technology.
Now, when we shift from his actions to his opinions, his views on artificial intelligence are they're a wild ride. He's been through 3 totally distinct phases in just a few years.
It's a fascinating look into how he thinks. The first phase, back in 2015, was just pure fear, dystopian dread.
He said the future was scary and very bad for people.
Yeah, he was convinced that superintelligent AIs would look at us, see our inefficiencies, and just get rid of the slow humans to run things better.
Heavy stuff. But then, almost overnight, he did a complete 180, still in 2015.
He pivoted to what you could call the family pet phase. He decided that a truly smart AI wouldn't get rid of us. It would realize it needs us.
And turn us into pampered dependents.
Exactly. We would become the family pet, cared for and looked after. And he took this so literally. There's this great story that he started feeding his own dog, Maggie, filet steak every night to prepare her for her future role as a cherished dependent of a superintelligence.
That is hilarious.
Uh,
But even that phase didn't last. By 2016, he'd changed his mind again.
And this is where he is now, in a more skeptical, partnership-focused phase. He started to doubt that a computer could ever truly replicate human intuition.
So his current view is that if superintelligence does happen, they won't see us as pets or obstacles. They'll see us as partners.
Right. Partners of humans over all other species. It's a much more optimistic and, I think, realistic view. And his recent actions reflect that caution.
He signed that big open letter in 2023, calling for a 6-month pause on training AI systems more powerful than GPT-4.
He's not trying to stop AI, he's just demanding responsibility and guardrails. He's worried that it's making scams, like the one that used his likeness, so much more sophisticated and harder for normal people to spot.
So outside of all this tech and philosophy, who is Wozniak the person?
He's this really complex mix of engineer, humanitarian, and just a delightful eccentric.
He describes himself as an atheist or agnostic, so his worldview is very much grounded in science and reason.
Right. And he had this brief, weird journey with the Freemasons back in the late 70s.
Why did he join?
To spend more time with his then-wife, who was in a related organization, but he left pretty quickly. He said the rituals and traditions just didn't fit his tech geek personality.
He's also dealt with some health issues recently. He had a minor stroke late last year in 2023, and he also manages a condition called prosopagnosia,
which is face blindness. He has a hard time recognizing familiar faces, sometimes even his own family. It's a strange irony for a man who designed some of the world's most famous visual display systems.
And his hobbies are just as unique as he is. He plays Segway polo.
For a team called the Silicon Valley Aftershocks, of course, it's the perfect woes, hobby, quirky, tech-forward, and fun. He's also a huge fan of the San Jose Sharks hockey team.
But the best glimpse into his personality might be his TV appearances. His time on Dancing with the Stars was it was magnificent chaos.
He got terrible scores from the judges, but the fans kept voting for him. And at one point, he thought he was unfairly eliminated, and he publicly questioned the show's voting algorithm, the ultimate engineer response, before realizing he was wrong and apologizing.
And that's how a lot of people know him. When he did a cameo on The Big Bang Theory, Penny didn't recognize him from Apple.
Nope. She recognized him from Dancing with the Stars. It perfectly captures his unique, humble, and just weirdly wonderful place in pop culture.
So, when we put it all together, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? Wozniak's entire career is this perfect illustration of the difference between pure invention and commercialization.
Exactly. It's the engineer versus the marketer. His greatest successes, the Apple I and Apple II, came from this incredibly pure place. He was designing them for himself and his friends.
He built them, in his own words, because he wanted to use them and they didn't exist.
And he said his best work happened when he had no money and no training because it forced him to be brutally efficient and simple.
His whole thing was that technology should be fun, it should be open, and it should be accessible. His real legacy isn't Apple's stock price. It's the fact that he designed the architecture that let anyone buy a computer, plug something into it, and start creating. He democratized the whole thing.
Which brings us back to that provocative thought we wanted to leave you with. And it's all centered on his critique of the Macintosh. Remember, he called the original Mac a lousy product.
Because it prioritized that sleek, closed design Jobs' vision over the function and expandability that Wozniak valued. He thought its success only came later, after it was changed to be more practical.
So the question for you to really think about is this. Does true user-centric, industry-changing innovation require that pure, almost detached focus of an engineer? Someone who is shielded from the pressures of marketing departments and profit margins and closed ecosystems?
Or do you need that tension? Do you need the Steve Jobs hustle to take that garage invention and scale it into something that's in every home? Think about Wozniak's strange compromise today, that employee status, that stipend, and ask yourself if that philosophical distance is the only way an inventor can stay a truly honest voice.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.